Good afternoon. After that, I want you to know this is a presentation on budget today, and it's not that kind of budgeting. I am here to introduce Dr. Kent Friedland, and Kent is our Associate Superintendent in our school district here, CCUSD, for Operations and Finance. And we've had a little roadshow that's been going on for a couple years, and this is one of the presentations where we try to explain to people the very unique way that Arizona funds its schools and what that means for our school district and ultimately the kids that are going to be ruling our world as we grow older and older. So I wanted to introduce him. I want to thank you for listening, and when he's done, we entertain questions and pay attention. There might be a test afterwards. Kent?
Good afternoon, everybody. Everybody's fired up here?
Get out. He's going to look at the room.
All right, as Dr. Brady said, I work for the school district and, kind of like the chief bean counter. Some of you appreciate that, understand what we're talking about. Kind of try to keep track of everything that we get and make sure that we spend it wisely. So for today, what I really want to do is just talk about a few basic things. One, to help you to understand how school districts are funded in Arizona. It is a little bit different than in some of the other states that where you may have come from. And to help you understand the basic nature, where the money comes from for our students, and then lastly, where we spend that money, how we spend that money to benefit the education of the students. We put this graphic together to try and help people to understand a whole lot of things about school finance in the state of Arizona. This doesn't just apply to us, this applies to every school district in the state of Arizona. It's kind of busy, but it tells a lot of different things. It's a pyramid, and the base of the pyramid is really our what keeps us going. It's our operating budget. The M&O budget, or the maintenance and operation budget, is the daily operating budget that we use in the school district. And in the bottom pyramid, those are the dollars that we get for various areas of spending. They're simply tied to the number of students that we have. That's the easiest way to figure it out in the state of Arizona. The more students you have, the more money you get. And it's so much per student that we'll talk about. The state of Arizona actually determines that. We don't determine how much we request from our taxpayers. The state decides how much we get from the taxpayers. And if you look at anytime you get your tax bill, if you look at it, read it, a lot of people don't, you'll see on there the Cave Creek School District if you live within our boundaries. And it'll say primary tax, it'll say secondary tax. And if you ever wondered what that was all about, I'm going to just briefly tell you. The bottom part of the paragraph, or the pyramid, is primary tax. And that, again, represents the money we use to operate the school district on a day-to-day basis. The state says we get it. We can't take any more. We can't take any less. We take exactly what they say we get. Then we calculate what the tax rate is going to be based on the assessed valuation of the school district. And it's very straightforward. The second layer of the pyramid is money that you, the voters, decide we get or we don't get. It's additional money to supplement the school district. And it can be used to help the operating budget, or it can be used for capital expenditures, such as building new schools, buying new equipment, buying new computers. But that's purely up to the voters and decided by the voters. It's tied to what's called the secondary tax. So if you look at your tax bill, you've got a primary tax and you've got a secondary tax. The top part of the pyramid then is all of the other funds that we get. We get grants, we get donations, we get other types of money from the state and the federal government, but it's really the smallest part of the budget, and that's why the pyramid really kind of works for that reason. School districts run on the fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th, and we are bound by certain rules and regulations on how we do our budget. The governing board of the school district is a body of 5 elected officials, and they have to adopt a budget. We have to propose a budget no later than 10 days before July 15th. The governing board then has to adopt it no later than July 15th for the next fiscal year. We have opportunities to revise it throughout the year, but we run on a standard budget cycle that runs from July 1st to June 30th. The challenge that we're having this year, as you know, is that the state is running a deficit. It's a trickle-down deficit, because if they have a deficit, then they're going to make us share in that deficit. The challenge is that the governing board has to adopt a budget by July 15th, but the state legislature doesn't have to even pass their budget until June 30th. So that's one of the challenges that we in our local school district are dealing with, and every other school district in the state. It's in the news all the time about all the layoffs, all the proposed layoffs, and it's due to the inactivity, in part, of the state legislature. Talk about a couple of funds today, just to give you an understanding of how we spend our money, how we get our money, and we do what's called fund accounting, and if you have been in accounting, you know what I'm talking about. It's just the separation of the money that you get by an account, by what's called a fund. You track your revenues and you track your expenses on a fund-by-fund basis. Here's a few of the funds that we have available to operate the school district on a daily basis. What's called our M&O fund, that's our main budget. We have a couple of overrides that the voters have approved to supplement our operating budget. We do not have a capital override. That's something that a school district can have, but it requires the vote of the public to help. It provides things, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. We do have a little bit of bond money left over. You can use bonds only to build buildings, to renovate buildings, to buy school buses, to buy land, that kind of thing. Can't employ people with the bond money. So where does our M&O budget come from? It comes from a formula that the state has put together and said it's all based on what's called ADM, average daily membership. Average daily membership is pretty much defined really simply by the number of students who are enrolled in our schools. Attendance doesn't come into play. It's really the number of students who are enrolled there. And the number of students who are enrolled for the first 100 days. That's the critical time period. So there's a whole series of calculations we have to do to track those students and find out how many are actually enrolled. It isn't quite a simple process like it might seem. Then we have to look at each individual student and we say, okay, is Johnny have any special abilities or disabilities? We get a little extra money if he's gifted. We get a lot extra money if he is disabled. We get a little extra money even if he's just a high school student compared to an elementary student. And it's called weighting. We have a student who's just a plain vanilla student, and then they say, okay, if he is an elementary student, you get an extra 15%. But if he's a high school student, you get an extra 26%. But for example, if he has a disability, this is an example of one type of disability. Maybe he happens to be hearing impaired. They give us an extra 4.7, which is almost